The silent cry, the crystalline towers of New Axeron burned with unnatural fire as Ambassador Kilvarson watched his homeworld die from the observation deck of the orbital defense platform. The elegant spires that had taken 3 centuries to grow were dissolving under streams of acidic biomatter, their songs of harmony replaced by the wet, hungry sounds of consumption. The Nethic collective had come to feed, and nothing in the galaxy seemed capable of stopping them. Keel's secondary hearts hammered against his ribcage as another transport ship fell to the writhing tentacles of a Nethic harvester. The biomechanical nightmare was larger than most cities, its surface crawling with neural networks that pulsed with stolen consciousness from a dozen conquered worlds. Every life it consumed made it smarter, stronger, more efficient at the art of systematic extinction. 3 days. That was all it had taken for the Axeron Republic's golden age to crumble into ash and screaming. The collective's scout vessels had emerged from hyperspace without warning, immediately releasing clouds of conversion spores that began transforming the outer settlements into feeding grounds. By the time Axeron Defense Forces could respond, half the system was already compromised. Communications Officer Zara Then, her usual blue-tinted skin now pale with exhaustion, looked up from her console with desperate eyes. "Ambassador, we have responses to our distress calls." Keel turned from the viewport, where another section of New Axeron's surface was being consumed by creeping biological matter. His people were dying down there, their crystalline bodies dissolved and reformed into components for Nethic war machines. "What do our allies say?" The young officer's crest feathers drooped with disappointment. "The Valorian Trade Federation offers evacuation ships. They can be here in 6 weeks. The Celestial Confederacy promises emergency medical supplies and temporary housing for refugees. Estimated arrival time is 4 to 5 weeks. 6 weeks. The Axeron Republic would be nothing but biomass and harvested minerals by then." Keel closed his 4 eyes and tried to center himself using the meditation techniques his grandmother had taught him, but the screams from the planet below made concentration impossible. His people had built their civilization on principles of harmony, art, and peaceful coexistence. They had no weapons capable of fighting the collective, no military doctrine for this kind of biological warfare. "Any other responses?" he asked, though hope was becoming a luxury he could no longer afford. Zara hesitated, her feathers shifting to the worried orange pattern that indicated uncertainty. "There is one more signal, sir. It comes from the restricted sectors beyond the Kepler barrier. The transmission identifies itself as the Terran Colonial Defense Authority." Every being on the command deck fell silent. The name Terran was whispered in the darkest corners of galactic society, usually followed by warnings about the monsters that lived on the edge of civilized space. Humanity had been discovered 3 decades ago by a Valorian exploration vessel, and the first contact reports had sent shockwaves through every government from the core worlds to the outer rim. Earth was a death world beyond imagination. Its surface was scoured by radiation, torn by tectonic violence, and populated by creatures that had evolved in conditions that would kill most galactic species in minutes. The humans who lived there were worse still. They were aggressive, unpredictable, and seemed to view violence as an acceptable solution to any problem. Most civilized governments had strict policies against contact with them. "What does their message say?" Keel asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Zara's feathers shifted to deep purple, the color of fear mixed with confusion. "Message received. Assistance acknowledged. Response force deploying. Estimated arrival 8 hours. Maintain defensive positions until relief arrives." 8 hours. It was impossible. Earth was 7 sectors away, across some of the most dangerous space in the galaxy. No ship could travel that distance so quickly without being torn apart by hyperspace storms or interdimensional radiation. Even if humans possessed technology far beyond galactic norms. The physics of faster-than-light travel had absolute limits. "Sir," called Sensor. Technician Morth from his station near the tactical displays. "I'm reading massive hyperspace distortions forming at the edge of the system. Something large is coming through." The main viewing screen flickered to life, showing the star field beyond Axeron Prime. Space itself began to bend and twist as reality folded around points of impossible energy concentration. What emerged from those tiers in space-time made every being on the command deck take an involuntary step backward. Ships poured through the hyperspace rifts like predators, emerging from their dens. These were not the elegant, curved vessels favored by galactic civilization. Human ships looked like they had been built for war first and aesthetics never. Angular hulls bristled with weapon systems that their computers could not identify. Dark armor plating absorbed light rather than reflecting it, giving the vessels an ominous presence that seemed to drink illumination from the surrounding stars. That the largest ship was 1.5 kilometers long, its hull studded with launch bays and sensor arrays that swept the system with active scans, powerful enough to interfere with Axeron equipment from across the solar system. Smaller vessels swarmed around it in formations that hurt to watch, their movements too aggressive and predatory for civilized minds to easily process. "How many ships?" Keel whispered. Morth checked his readings twice before answering. "I count 147 vessels, sir. But the energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. Their smallest ships put out more power than our heaviest battlecruisers." New voice came through the communication channels, speaking in accented but perfect Axeron. The tone was crisp, professional, and carried an undertone of controlled violence that made Keel's survival instincts scream warnings. "Axeron Defense Platform Alpha 7. This is Captain Elena Rodriguez of the Terran Expeditionary Force vessel Indomitable. We received your distress call and have come to render assistance." Keel found his voice after several tries. "Captain Rodriguez, we are grateful for your response, but you should understand what you face. The Nephic Collective has consumed dozens of star systems. Their biotechnology is beyond our ability to counter. Perhaps it would be better if your ships evacuated our survivors rather than engaging such a dangerous enemy." The human's laughter came through the speakers like breaking glass mixed with sharp steel. "Ambassador Varson, we didn't cross 7 sectors to run away from a fight. The Nephic Collective's reputation precedes them across this region of space. We've been monitoring their expansion for months, waiting for someone to formally request assistance." The tactical display showed the human fleet spreading into attack formations with mechanical precision. They moved like a single organism with 100 deadly appendages, each ship taking position with purpose that spoke of extensive planning and preparation. Whatever these humans had in mind, they had been ready for this confrontation long before the first distress call went out. "All Axeron vessels, this is Captain Rodriguez. Withdraw to minimum safe distance. We're about to demonstrate why most species are afraid of Deathworlders." The Nephic Collective finally responded to the human presence. Their communication came as a psychic assault that made everyone on the Axeron platform clutch their heads in pain. The bioships began to move from their feeding positions around New Axeron, turning toward the human fleet with hungry interest. Keel watched the sensor displays with growing amazement as the Collective's response unfolded. Over 800 Nephic vessels emerged from the planet's biosphere where they had been processing the population. Some were as large as space stations, their hulls grown from the bones and metals of consumed worlds. Others swarmed like insects, but each one was a living weapon evolved for the singular purpose of consumption and conversion. The odds were impossible. 147 human ships facing more than 800 Nephic biovessels, each one a nightmare of organic technology that had devoured the military forces of multiple star systems. Logic dictated that the humans were about to be consumed just like everyone else who had faced the collective. But Captain Rodriguez's next transmission suggested that humans did not share the galaxy's understanding of impossible odds. Attention, Nethic Collective. You have attacked a peaceful species that has requested our protection. You have exactly 60 seconds to begin immediate withdrawal from this system. This is your only warning. Asterisk. The collective's response came as a wave of psychic hatred that translated roughly to laughter mixed with contempt. They had faced the military might of 3 major galactic powers and consumed them all. What could a handful of ships from a backwater Deathworld possibly do against their proven superiority? Keel gripped the railing of the observation deck as the countdown reached 0. In his long career as a diplomat, he had witnessed battles between major fleet elements, watched the rise and fall of governments, and seen the tide of galactic politics shift with the fortune of war. But nothing had prepared him for what he was about to witness. The human fleet opened fire. Space turned into a storm of light and energy, unlike anything in recorded history. But it was not the overwhelming barrage that most species would have used against such odds. Instead, the humans fired with surgical precision, each shot placed with mathematical accuracy to achieve maximum disruption of Nethic biosystems. The first wave of collective vessels simply stopped functioning. Not destroyed, not damaged, but rendered completely inert, as human weapons interfaced with their biological networks and shut them down from the inside. It was as if someone had reached into the Nethic ships and turned off their consciousness with the flip of a switch. By the crystal harmony, breathed Zara, her feathers cycling through colors that indicated complete bewilderment. How are they doing that? Ambassador Keel watched the impossible battle unfold on his screens, and for the first time since the collective arrived, he began to believe that his people might survive. The humans had not come as saviors driven by altruism or allies seeking political advantage. They had come as predators who had found prey worthy of their attention. The Deathworlders had answered the call for help, and the galaxy was about to learn what that really meant. Asterisk the Deathworlders. Answer Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching her fleet systematically dismantle the Nethic collective with the calm efficiency of a surgeon removing a cancer. The tactical displays showed red dots disappearing one by one as human weapons interfaced with Nethic biosystems and shut down their neural networks. Each eliminated ship represented thousands of consumed lives from across the galaxy. Civilizations reduced to component biomatter for the collective's endless hunger. Status report. Commander Chun, she requested from her second-in-command, a lean man whose dark eyes held the focused intensity of someone who had spent 20 years studying how to kill things efficiently. First, wave neutralized, Captain. 8-7 Nethic vessels disabled. Crews alive but unconscious. Second wave attempting to form defensive positions around the larger harvesters near the planet. They're adapting faster than our models predicted, Rodriguez nodded. The collective's ability to learn and evolve was what made them so dangerous to conventional military thinking. Every battle made them stronger. Every victory taught them new tactics. But humans had learned long ago that conventional military thinking was often the first casualty of real warfare. Deploy hunter-killer groups Alpha through Delta. Want them to think we're dividing our forces. On the Axron observation platform, Ambassador Keel watched in fascination as the human fleet broke apart into smaller formations. To any civilized military analyst, this looked like a catastrophic error. Dividing your forces when outnumbered was the kind of mistake that ended careers and lost wars. But Keel was beginning to understand that humans approached warfare from directions that other species couldn't imagine. Each hunter group contained 12 ships that moved together with mechanical precision. They did not attack the Nethic defensive positions directly. Instead, they began a complex dance around the bioships. firing concentrated bursts at specific points on their hulls while maintaining impossible flight patterns that defied several laws of physics. There, not trying to destroy the Nethic vessels, observed Communications Officer Zara, her feathers shifting to the deep green of analytical thinking. They're performing surgical strikes on neural clusters. The human strategy became clear as disabled. Nethic ships began to drift away from their formations. The biovessels were not dead, but they were cut off from the collective's hive mind. Isolated and confused, they posed no threat to anyone while their crews remained alive inside inert hulls. Captain Rodriguez's voice came through the communication channels, addressing the Nethic collective directly. This is your second and final warning. Withdraw from this system immediately or face complete neutralization. We have no desire to exterminate your species, but we will not tolerate the consumption of peaceful civilizations. The collective's response came as a wave of psychic fury mixed with desperate calculation. They had never faced an enemy that could shut down their ships without killing their crews. The concept of mercy was alien to their nature, making human tactics incomprehensible and therefore terrifying. Fresh Nethic reinforcements began dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge. These were not the mindless drones that had attacked the Axeron settlements. These were the collective's elite vessels, bioships grown from the neural matter of conquered species and crewed by their most experienced predators. They moved with purpose and intelligence that spoke of tactical thinking rather than simple hunger. Captain, reported Commander Chun, sensors show 300 new contacts. These are different from the first wave. Higher energy output, more sophisticated biotechnology, and they're maintaining formation discipline. Rodriguez studied the tactical display with the eye of someone who had spent her career preparing for exactly this kind of asymmetric warfare. The collective was finally taking humanity seriously as a threat, which meant they would bring their full capabilities to bear. All ships. Execute Protocol 7. What happened next defied every principle of fleet warfare that the galaxy had established over millennia of interstellar conflict. The human ships stopped acting like individual vessels and began to flow like components of a single massive organism. They formed patterns that shifted and evolved faster than organic minds could follow, creating three-dimensional geometries that somehow enhanced their weapons' effectiveness while making them nearly impossible to target. Asterisk. The Nethic elite forces opened fire with bioweapons that had consumed the fleets of major galactic powers. Streams of acidic matter designed to dissolve any known hull material filled the space between the opposing forces. Clouds of nanoscale organisms programmed to consume specific elements targeted the humans' most vulnerable systems. The human fleet flew through the biological storm like it was empty space. How? Whispered Keel, gripping the observation rail as he watched the impossible display. His science officer, a brilliant Axeron named Vel, whose crystalline form resonated with sensor frequencies, was studying the readings with growing amazement. Ambassador, the human ships are not avoiding the Nethic weapons. They are neutralizing them. Their hulls appear to be designed specifically to counter biotechnology. The acid that should dissolve their armor is being converted into fuel for their shields. The nanoorganisms are dying on contact with their hull materials. The revelation hit the Axeron command staff like a physical blow. Humans had not just developed defenses against Nethic weapons. They had built their entire fleet specifically to hunt the collective. Every system on their ships, every tactic they employed, every piece of technology they deployed had been designed with this enemy in mind. They knew, breathed Zara, her feathers cycling through patterns of wonder and fear. The humans knew about the collective long before this attack. They have been preparing for this war. Captain Rodriguez's voice filled the communication channels as her fleet moved through the Nethic elite forces like wolves among sheep. Attention all vessels in this system. The Terran Colonial Defense Authority has been monitoring extragalactic threats for 15 years. We know the capabilities, tactics, and weaknesses of every hostile force that has entered this region of space. Truth was even more terrifying than the battle itself. Humans had not responded to a distress call out of altruism or political opportunity. They had been waiting, watching, and preparing for the day when someone would formally request their help against threats that conventional galactic civilization could not handle. Ambassador Keel found himself wondering what other enemies humanity was prepared to fight. What other nightmares from the void had they identified and developed countermeasures for? The implications suggested that humans viewed the entire galaxy as their responsibility, whether other species wanted their protection or not. The battle reached its crescendo as the largest Nathek harvester, a bioship the size of a small moon, began to rise from the planet's surface. This was the Collective's queen vessel, grown over centuries and containing the consciousness of every world they had consumed. Its emergence from New Axeron's biosphere created tidal forces that disrupted weather patterns and caused seismic activity across 3 continents. The queen vessel's psychic presence hit every mind in the system like a sledgehammer. Keel felt his thoughts scatter under the assault of alien hunger and contempt. Collective's true nature was finally revealed. Not just predators, but parasites that consumed entire civilizations and wore their memories like trophies. Captain Rodriguez's response was immediate and precise. All ships, priority target identified. Execute termination protocol. The human fleet converged on the queen vessel with mechanical precision. What followed was not a battle, but a demonstration of how thoroughly humans had studied their enemy. Every shot was placed to cause maximum neural disruption. Every attack pattern was designed to overwhelm specific biological systems. The queen vessel's defenses, evolved over millions of years to protect against any conceivable threat, proved useless against weapons that had been built specifically to exploit its weaknesses. The great bioship's death scream echoed across subspace, reaching every Nethek vessel in the galaxy. The sound carried pain, confusion, and something that no member of the Collective had ever experienced before: genuine fear of another species. As the queen vessel's consciousness flickered and died, the remaining Nethek ships throughout the system simply stopped fighting. Cut off from their queen's guidance and facing an enemy they could not understand, they drifted in space like lost children. This is Captain Rodriguez to all Nethek survivors. You have 30 minutes to begin evacuation procedures from this system. Any vessel that remains after that deadline will be disabled and impounded pending war crimes tribunals. You will face justice for what you have done, but you will face it alive. The human fleet began rescue operations even as the last Nethek ships fled into hyperspace. They pulled Axeron survivors from dying settlements, deployed medical facilities for the wounded, and began the complex process of neutralizing the biological contamination that covered 3/4 of New Axeron's surface. But they also did something else that chilled Keel to his core. Human ships moved through the debris field, collecting every piece of Nethek biotechnology they could find. Every weapon system, every piece of genetic data, every neural pattern went into human storage containers. What are they doing? Asked Zara, watching human salvage operations with worried eyes. They are making sure, Keel replied slowly, that no one can ever rebuild what they just destroyed. Captain Rodriguez's final transmission came as the human fleet prepared to depart, leaving only a small patrol force to guard the system. Ambassador Varson, the immediate threat to your people has been eliminated. We will leave monitoring stations to ensure your safety during reconstruction. We also formally request permission to establish permanent diplomatic relations with the Axeron Republic. The request was polite, but Keel understood it was not really a request. Humanity had demonstrated their ability to cross 7 sectors in 8 hours and eliminate a threat that had consumed dozens of star systems. They could have easily conquered the Axaron Republic instead of saving it. Permission granted, Captain Rodriguez. And thank you for answering our call for help. Thank you for trusting us, Rodriguez replied. We know what we are. We know how we appear to others. But sometimes the galaxy needs monsters to fight the real monsters. As the human fleet vanished into hyperspace, leaving the Axaron system safe but forever changed, Keel stood alone on his observation deck and pondered the future. Humanity had announced their presence on the galactic stage, not as conquerors or diplomats, but as guardians. They had shown that they would protect peaceful species from threats beyond their ability to handle. But questions remained that would reshape interstellar politics for generations to come. What would happen when humans decided that peaceful species were making the wrong choices? What would happen when humanity's definition of protection conflicted with other species' desire for independence? The galaxy had gained protectors more powerful than any empire in recorded history. Whether that protection would become a blessing or a curse remained to be seen. But one thing was certain. The age of human isolation was over, and the universe would never be the same. In the growing light of New Axaron's healing sun, Ambassador Keel Varson began composing the report that would inform galactic civilization of its new reality. The Deathworlders had come to stay, and everyone else would have to decide where they stood in this brave new universe. Asterisk.